Okay.
So I'd like to introduce Dave Benson, who's joining us from the Office of Information Technology. And Dave is an expert and whiz in Zoom. He's been working on all of the campus's issues relating to this platform, especially the security changes and the new Canvas integration coming up. So we are thankful that Dave is here to join us today, and we are going to get started. I am sharing my screen right now, and I am sharing this in the chat as well. This is our little how-to guide for Zoom Foundations. This is the schedule of what we will be covering in this workshop today, and the underlined pieces are links which you can click on if you open the PDF, and those are leading you to some tutorials about these particular settings and features of Zoom. So I'm going to stop my share and let Dave take over. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Rebecca. Yep, did a pretty great job doing the introduction there. So I am the Video Collaboration Service Manager, and I do oversee all things Zoom. I might be an expert in some things, but I certainly learned something new from everybody, including Rebecca. So I look to everyone at the university as well. But yeah, thank you for the invitation, Rebecca. Today we're going to be going over scheduling. We're going to be doing in-meeting controls. We'll be reviewing the desktop application settings. We'll be reviewing the web portal, which is kind of the overall management portal. We'll be discussing cloud recording, and then ultimately the Zoom Canvas integration. If it seems like it a lot to get through in an hour, it is. So I will do my best to kind of stop and answer questions. Please feel free to interrupt me or put things in the chat. Rebecca can chime in, and she can also interrupt me as well. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and get started and share my screen here. Cool. So this is going to be a little bit tricky when you're doing a Zoom training session in a training session or in a Zoom session. You'll be seeing kind of yourselves here. So I'm going to go ahead and pop open a new Zoom window, excuse me, and we're going to review scheduling. So there's a couple different places that you can do it. You can do scheduling for within the desktop application itself. You can do it in the Canvas integration, which we will be discussing towards the end of the meeting here. And you can also do it in the web browser, which is going to be here. So I'm going to start with this guy in the desktop application. And we're going to go ahead and just call this test meeting. I'm not going to go too much into depth into this. We're operating based on the assumption that you have at least scheduled a meeting in the past, but there are a couple of things to point out at this point in time. And one of them is certainly the security section. So please familiarize yourself with meeting security. I know this meeting may be geared towards ALTEC, and Rebecca may have some things she wants to chime in on here. I think in this specific case, a passcode may be recommended, so you can just simply specify a passcode for the meeting, and that way people can do it or join that way. There are a couple other options here, including the waiting room and domain-based authentication. These are more strict forms of allowing people to join the session. For example, if you were to use domain-based authentication, it's only going to allow people that are signed into their Zoom account with CU Boulder credentials to join. This is great for class sessions. And similarly, a waiting room will, by default, allow only those that have joined from their CU Boulder credentials to bypass the waiting room and enter directly into the meeting. However, anybody else outside of the university, for example, guest speakers, people without CU Boulder credentials, they'll go into a waiting room and you would need to manually admit them one by one. Rebecca, did you want to highlight anything about the passcode here?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention for our particular non-credit language classes, because we have individuals who are coming from outside of the university to join us, we can't use forced authentication through SSO, the single sign-on service, but we can use a passcode to protect our classes. And I'd also mention that the waiting room is a great feature, but notice that it could be difficult if you have a lot of students that you have to admit throughout your class, and it could be a little distracting. So just a quick mention about that one.
Absolutely, perfect. Yep. And the passcode is not, I mean, I think we should speak clearly. Passcodes are not the best form of meeting security. However, in the case of ALTEC, I think it's in the situations that Rebecca just mentioned, I think it would be sufficient. Just know that people, if there's somebody that is determined to create an issue in a course, like say, for example, you have a problematic student, they could simply redistribute this passcode. That doesn't mean it's going to happen, but just know that in general, if you want stronger security, you would have to go this route, but take note of the limitations. So yeah, that is that. In this case, I'll go ahead and assume that this is for a class or something like that. So we're going to just schedule a recurrence, and that'll just mean that we will specify the date range within our calendar of choice. So yeah, I'm not going to go too much into depth here, but we will go ahead and just pop up a mock schedule, or I'm sorry, a mock meeting. And here it is. And since this is a recurring meeting, what that means on the Zoom side of things is that that meeting link is going to stay the same. It's going to remain static, and it's going to remain static for up to a year after the date of last use. So in our case, like for my case, for example, I use Outlook. So here I would just make it, you set the recurrence up here, you specify all your time frames, and what this does is tell the meeting invitees or participants, attendees, to it just gives them an idea of when to join the meeting. It has no effect on the actual Zoom link itself. The Zoom link, as I said, will remain active for at least or for 1 year after the last date of use. So you could use a recurring Zoom link in perpetuity as long as it's used or reused within a 1 calendar year. So that is that. And let me go ahead and just navigate over here and show you where you can schedule in the Zoom management portal. Rebecca's included some documentation on how to get to the portal, but just so we know, it's at cuboulder.zoom.us, and you log in with your identity credentials. And this is kind of where we'll spend a lot of time a little bit later here. But yeah, you could go to the meeting section, you can schedule right here, and this is all going to look very familiar. So we'll call this test 1, and we'll call it a recurrence. Here, you would actually specify the recurrence. This is because we're doing it in the web browser. So just make sure you set this up, and I'll show you what that looks like shortly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And again, everything here kind of looks the same. So we'll go ahead and save that. And this doesn't populate anything within the calendar. So if you want to add it to a calendar invite, you can choose your options here if you'd like. But ultimately, the most important thing is this link here that'll allow people a one-touch option to join the meeting. And again, you can also just distribute out the meeting ID, but this is just another area in which you can do it. And again, we will be discussing the Canvas integration and how to schedule within there shortly. So I'm not going to move over there yet.
And I would just mention under those meeting options, you can automatically have your meeting recorded to the cloud. It's important to select to the cloud instead of locally on your computer. That's a really helpful component, and it'll be important for the Canvas integration.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rebecca. I appreciate that. So automatically record meeting is the setting that she was just mentioning, and that would be here in the cloud. And again, there's a ton of benefits of recording to the cloud, some caveats as well, but we will discuss those shortly. So we'll go ahead and save that. Cool. So that was scheduling, and now we're going to navigate back over here. And again, I know this is a little bit funky to kind of see yourselves within my screen share here, but this is the best way to kind of demonstrate everything. So in meeting controls, managing participants in chat. So one thing, as you can see here, I had some notifications in my chat window. Pop it open here, and I can kind of see the things that Rebecca's dropping in. One spot to kind of look at as you become a power user and more familiar with managing the chat is here. These 3 dots on the lower right corner will give you some more options for the chat. And this is where we would determine who can chat with who. Yours will look differently, specifically in this meeting, because your participants, Rebecca and myself, are both the host and the alternative host. But so I have these options available to me now, but just note, if you want to disable chat altogether, please feel free to do that. You can do it right here. If you want people to only be able to chat with the host, you would specify that here. Everyone publicly, you want it open, kind of a free-for-all, that's fine. And then as we have here, which is the default option, would be to, everybody can message each other directly, but they can also publicly post things. And what that directly option here means is that you can select a person and send them a private message.
I'd also mention that note that the Zoom chat is dependent on your participants being there at the beginning of class. So if you have someone who joins late, they won't receive these same notifications that the earlier participants receive. So you'll see that I've shared the same link several times as people have joined our meeting. So that might be important for you to know as your students arrive late to class. So you might have to reshare documents. And that little file piece that you see down at the bottom, that's a feature that you can enable within your settings.
Yeah, and we will discuss that. Thank you so much, Rebecca. We will discuss the file share setting and where that is enabled. I wouldn't recommend it unless it is needed, and that's for various reasons. There have been some security things that file share was ultimately removed because there were some incidents that would come through. People would click on malicious links. In this case, a lot of that has been, it's not a Zoom issue, but they did need to address some technical things in the back end. But we will discuss it, and it's certainly helpful, especially if you want to keep everything within the meeting itself. The other thing that you won't be able to see here, I can't save the chat, but depending on the settings of this meeting, you should, as participants, be able to save the chat now. And what Rebecca was referencing earlier is that if you come in late, you're not going to see all three of these. You're only going to see the most recent one that was posted, or I'm sorry, you will only get the things that come through after you've joined. So if you save the chat, it's not going to save everything retroactively. And now we're going to go ahead and move over to the different views that are available. So right now, I personally am in gallery view. I like to get an overall view of everybody that's in the meeting. I think it's particularly helpful, especially like in a class situation or a training session where you can just get a high level overview. What's really nice is if you're teaching remotely and you have multiple monitors, you can get kind of the gallery view open on one screen and you can kind of multitask. So it's really great. To switch the view, you would go here and you'll see a speaker view, and it shows the option of the last person that spoke. In this case, it was Rebecca. I'm going to switch back over. This is probably a little bit strange for her to see herself again. But anyway, those are the two different options that you have. These are available not only for the host, but also to the participants as well. So you can dynamically switch between that. I can switch to full screen. It just gives you a much better, larger, fills the screen out. So it's pretty straightforward. I personally don't choose that, but it's just for my own personal reasons. Let's get into pinning and spotlighting. Spotlighting specifically is for the host. So as I think I'll have this as an alternative host. Rebecca, I'm going to use you as an example. I'm not going to spotlight Rebecca currently, but I do have the option to do that. And you will have the option to spotlight up to 9 participants for any given session. So if I were to spotlight Rebecca, and actually maybe I will go ahead and just do that real quick. You should be seeing, if you're in active speaker view, not the gallery view, you should see Rebecca spotlighted, not myself. I will go ahead and oops, I need to figure out where I just did that. And move back over to gallery view here. Okay, and then to remove the spotlight, you simply go back to their tile and remove the spotlight. I believe you can actually do this in the participants pane here as well. So let me go here, and here's where you can also, a separate option to do that. So that is spotlighting. It's really great for highlighting keynote speakers, people that you want to be front and center. Just know that the participants have the option on their side, if they decide to move back over to gallery view, they don't have to view that. Conversely, oops, sorry about that. Navigate back here. Conversely, as a participant, you have the option to pin different people that you want to view front and center. And if you navigate to each participant, you should be able to just go here and you can pin them on your screen. And I think where that comes into play, and Rebecca, you might have to help me out here, but would be like a virtual seating chart. So you can kind of put people in the orientation that you want. So if you have 50 people on a Zoom session, which theoretically you could have 50 people here, you can place them in the areas that you want. And you can, sorry, this is probably the virtual chart that she was referencing, but same thing with pinning. You can kind of move people around.
And I want to mention on that, the spotlight piece is really important if you're teaching a language like American Sign Language, that's a non-vocal language. If you spotlight yourself as the instructor, it will help your students keep their eye on you in case someone else is, for example, forgetting to mute themselves and they're moving around in their seat, so that the Zoom application doesn't pick them up as the active speaker and keeps you as the active speaker as the instructor. So spotlighting has some different language applications as well.
Perfect. Yeah. The other thing that we wanted to discuss was side-by-side mode. And I don't think I have a way of actually demonstrating that to you because I'm currently the host and sharing my screen. But as the participant, right now, you should be able to go to the top, I believe it's the top right corner, and switch. And Rebecca, please correct me if I'm wrong, but you should be able to.
There's actually a bar at the top of your screen. You'll see the green bar that says you're viewing somebody's screen, and then you'll see a black option that says view options. You can click on that down arrow, and then you can click side-by-side mode. And what it will do is it'll have the screen share on one side, and then all of the participants on the other side, and there'll be a bar in the middle that you can move from one side to the other to increase or decrease either the screen share or the participants.
Rebecca, I don't know if it's too much of a hassle since, well, no, you're also the host. Yeah, I'll let you both play around with that. I was going to kind of navigate, but it is really cool, especially being able to resize the image. You can also change the order or who you're viewing on the right-hand side of the screen, for example. So you have the shared content on one side, and then you have your participants. I believe you can switch between gallery view and active speaker. So it's really cool and definitely helpful and worth noting. Cell phone limitations, I think Rebecca put, can you speak to the cell phone limitations? I would imagine you're talking about screen size when you're in this mode, correct?
Yes, with a cell phone, the Zoom application is not quite the same. So your students won't be able to interact with Zoom in exactly the same ways. So just keep that in mind. And if you have students you know are using cell phones, you might have a conversation with them of what activities are troublesome for them so that you know in advance how to accommodate their needs.
Perfect. Yeah, great. Let's move over to screen sharing. So I'm currently already doing some screen sharing. However, you'll see here that we have a ton of different options. It can be overwhelming, and this is often a point of confusion. So let me just go ahead and specify. So in my case, I have dual displays. I have the option, if I want to just share exactly what's on my desktop, on my first screen, I can do that. I can also do that on if I only want to share my second screen. So pretty straightforward there. These different applications that are open are exactly that. They're applications that are currently open on my computer. And if I only want to share that specific application with the participants, I have that choice. So just something to take note of there. The specific application options are helpful in that if you're doing something else in the background while you're also screen sharing, it's not going to be visible to somebody. If you were to choose, or I'm sorry, to the attendees, if you were to choose desktop 1 or screen 2, it's going to mirror exactly what you're doing on that screen. So just take note there. When you're sharing YouTube, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say YouTube, but if you're sharing video and audio content, there are a couple of really important options to point out. Share sound. If you have any video content or audio content that you're going to share out, you need to make sure you click this button. Otherwise, it's not going to allow the far end or remote participants to hear what the video is playing or what audio is playing. So definitely click that. And then if you have video content specifically, you'll definitely want to choose the optimize for video clip. What that does is kind of does some fancy stuff on the back end to make the quality a lot better. So typically, you'll want to choose it so the video is less choppy. It prioritizes bandwidth. Like I said, does a bunch of fancy stuff on the back end. But just note, if you're ever sharing a video and the far end participants say they can't hear you, remember, stop your screen share, restart it, make sure that you've clicked the share sound, because this is a really common mistake. And I think that was probably the majority of what we were going to cover for screen share. I want to point out a really cool feature. it's a beta feature, but it is handy, and I'm kind of segueing here, but I'm going to go ahead and share that out. What this does is allows you to use a PowerPoint presentation that you've pre-created as a virtual background. We'll go ahead and just pop this on here so you can see what it looks like. Actually, Rebecca, are you guys seeing my PowerPoint?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I don't know, it's hidden somewhere. There it is, cool. So one of the fun features as the host here is you can kind of move yourself around. So you'll see this, and this is live. So Maria, Susanna, you should see that. Yeah, I think it's a cool feature too, and I really think it's worth pointing out, even though it's in beta. But it's just fun and kind of gives some more exciting presentation, I suppose. So that's that.
From a language perspective, this is a really powerful feature because you could have a background that has a lot of different content on it, and you can move yourself around and point to different things as if you're in your physical classroom. So this is a way to replicate that feeling for your students of being there, interacting with your whiteboard.
Yeah. Just note, it is in beta, but it has been released for several months now, and I've given presentations on it and had no issues. So if you have problems, it's probably because it's the beta release. It should be formally released, but as long as you're on a current version of Zoom, you should be able to see that. And let me go ahead and share my screen again, but I will not do the virtual background. And we'll go ahead and move over to polls. So previously, oh, actually, I don't see polls in here. I think, Rebecca, you're probably going to have to do the demonstration of this unless you're not comfortable doing that. I did kind of prepare for that and had the idea. Do you want me to go ahead and demonstrate it on my remote computer, or do you want to do it?
Whatever's easiest for you.
Okay, let's go ahead and just do it here on this remote computer. So actually, you know what? I lied, Rebecca, you're going to have to do it because I'm on a special test account. So let me stop sharing. Would you mind demonstrating polls? Are you comfortable?
Sure, I'm going to create a poll right now.
Yeah, and I was actually going to do that, Rebecca. So if you want to show them the process of actually navigating to the polls option within an existing meeting, but then also highlighting the option that we can pre-create the poll.
Okay, so I am going to share my screen just because that'll make it a little bit easier for everyone to see. So I am sharing my screen. Hopefully you can see everything. Yes, great. Okay, so I would come down here to more options, and I would click on polling, and then I can add a question. And when I do that, it's going to open up the CU Boulder Zoom website. I would need to create a question name and then the actual question. So pick the right response. And then you can have this as single choice or multiple choice, whatever makes sense for you. And then you would save this, and then you'll see that the poll is right here, and you can launch the poll. It'll show up on your student's screen. They can select the response that makes the most sense for them. And then when you are finished, you'll be able to end the poll, and then you can see how your students responded. And you can even share those results with your students. I think this is a really powerful tool for formative assessment when you want a quick answer to how your students are performing or understanding a concept in a class. For example, maybe you just taught a grammar concept and you want to make sure that your students are actually understanding before you continue going on. You can create a poll like this well in advance of your class via the Zoom meeting setup, and then you can have pre-created answers. So for example, ABC, you don't have to already know what you're going to ask in class. And then you can just launch this poll. You can say A is going to be this word, B is this word, and C is this word. You can put that in the chat, and then you can run this poll several times throughout the class. You can use the same poll without having to mess with the actual poll information. So this is a really helpful piece. And then again, you can share those results with everyone so they can see.
Thank you so
Stop
much.
sharing unless you need something else.
No, that's fine. Thank you so much for sharing that out. I appreciate it. All right, so I will share again here, and let me pull up my web browser. There is something here. So as you saw, you're able to create a poll. Like say you forgot to set the poll up ahead of time. which I'm going to demonstrate here shortly, but you can obviously enter right in, it'll bring you here and you would just create the poll. It just auto launches it for you. However, say a week after you set up the meeting, you realize you want to predefine the poll ahead of time. You can go ahead and just navigate to cboulder.zoom.us and you'll go to your meetings and you would choose the meeting that you want. And in this case, I'm going to edit all occurrences because I want them, oops, back here. I need to, there we go. I would scroll down to the bottom of the meeting in question, and this is where you can add the poll here as well. Same exact dialogue that you'll see. You can have numerous polls. So when you were, if we created 3 different polls, you'll see them listed here, but then also in the meeting, when you go to distribute the poll, you would choose which one that you want to give out at any given time. So that's where that's managed. I'll show you the Canvas integration shortly, where you can also add a poll, but in a different format. And we will move along to breakout rooms. So breakout rooms are super powerful if you're not already familiar with them. It's really great for group work, sending people out to kind of go into their own little mini meetings and then kind of ultimately coming back. So for this example, as the host, I'm going to go ahead and show you what it looks like to manage the breakout rooms within the meeting. Say in this meeting, I wanted to create 2 breakout rooms. I want the assignment to be automatic. I would just want Zoom to determine who goes where. It's just going to be a random generation. We would choose that. If I want to manually assign folks, I can also do that. I'll show you what that looks like. And then this is a brand new feature called let participants choose the room. What's really cool about that is you can let it's exactly what it is. You let participants choose the room that they go to. So you would open up the breakout sessions, say, pick your poison, go where you'd like to go. So in this case, I'm going to show you what assign manually looks like, and I'm going to create that. And it creates the 2 rooms that I specified, and I would go to assign here, and then I can pop Maria in one, and I could put Susanna in the other. That's what that would look like. The important thing to note here are some of the options. So you can, after you've opened up a manual assignment, you can choose the option for allowing participants to choose the room. By default, people will be able to come back to the main session at any given time. So say you send everybody out, some students out to go solve a problem, and some solve it in 5 minutes, some solve it in 10. They would have the option to just come back to the main session when they're done. There's another option here for automatically moving all participants into the breakout rooms. Here is where you specify a duration. So if it's 30 minutes, you would just set that. And this is just a countdown. I think they recently changed this from the default, what used to be 60. That might, it's arbitrary here, but you can specify how much, if they get a timer, or whether or not they get a timer. And that would be that. And I would open the rooms. I don't think I'm going to send you out just because we're halfway through our session here and we've got a lot more to cover, but that's kind of how you do it. The recreate option, just hit that if you want to start over from scratch after you've done like a session and you want to do it again, but you want to add more rooms, you want to change to automatically assign, go ahead and do that. That is breakout rooms.
And I would add, once you have opened rooms, there is a feature where you can broadcast a message to your students. So if you need to quickly say, hey guys, you have 10 more minutes left, wrap up your conversations, you can do that. Note that the broadcast message feature does expire within about 10 seconds of it being broadcast. So it's not good for lengthy conversations. It's just for a quick note to them. Also note that within the breakout rooms, the chat is just specific to that breakout room. It won't show everybody's chat, even so it looks like that. And that's a mistake I've made in the past.
Absolutely. Great points there. The other thing to note about breakout rooms is, say you have a situation that you're sending, maybe you have a group of students and you have a group of TAs and you want a TA, for example, in every single, or a moderator in every single breakout session. The attendees can record their own specific breakout session, which would be completely independent of the actual recording of the meeting. However, note that it's only a local recording and you have to allow people to record ahead of time. So if you have TAs that you think are going to be able to record, you send them their breakout rooms and they're not able to do that, you would simply go, you would navigate to their name and you would allow to record local files, for example. So yeah, just something worth pointing out there. And with that, I think we're going to go ahead and move over to our desktop settings.
And just one more quick mention about breakout rooms. We oftentimes are telling students to do something particular there, where you might have a specific assignment of do X, Y, Z while you're in this breakout room. Because it's difficult to share that with chat, there are some different ways you can do that. You can either have students look at that in the textbook, you can do it through the chat. If it's really short, you could do it through a broadcasted message, or you could have that listed on Canvas and just tell students where it is in Canvas to look for that activity description.
Yeah, thank you. And before we move on, I did just have one more thought on breakout rooms that popped into my head. As the host, you do have the ability to freely move in between breakout sessions. So if you want to pop in and check on them, you'll have a little dialogue where you'll see all of your breakout rooms with all the participants. And you'll see the option to join that. So feel free to join in that manner. Yeah. Rebecca, do you want to do the desktop application settings, or do you want me to just keep going here?
Go ahead.
Okay, cool. So we will navigate here. So desktop settings, this is one place that you manage settings that apply to the application itself, in this case, the desktop. We also have the higher level settings that propagate down to all meetings. They're more of global changes, and that is in the web portal. And we'll discuss that later. But for now, we're going to go just click the little cog here in the top right corner of your application, and you'll see all the different settings for a meeting. So you've got your general settings. Take a peek at those. Video settings, you'll see here. I put HD. You can mirror your video if you want. You can touch up your appearance, which just kind of changes the sharpness and the light a little bit. You can adjust for the lighting in your space. So just take note of these. I don't think HD is enabled by default. It could be wrong. That was in the past, but certainly worth if you have a good internet connection. And we always do recommend a hardwired connection for Zoom sessions, especially large meetings when possible. But just note, you can put yourself in high definition if you choose to do so, but it does tax the bandwidth a little bit more and requires a little more power. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to point out there. There is one good thing here about, I mentioned in the gallery view, you can have up to 49 participants. If you have a large session and you're not seeing everybody in a single window, just change this in your video settings to 49 participants. So that's that. Audio settings here are pretty straightforward. This is no different than changing down in the lower left corner here where you specify which microphone you're going to be using, which speaker you're going to be using. This is just a different place to do it. You can also test your microphone and do that. I've got some fancy features here that I was testing with, so don't pay attention to any of this stuff, but feel free to look through it. We do have some user guides up about musical performances and using the new high fidelity music mode and things like that. Screen share. There is one thing that I want to point out here, but you're not going to see it in your settings currently. And this is what Rebecca and I are doing to demonstrate this Zoom session. So by default, I am a host right now and I'm sharing my screen. Right now, you're seeing all these fancy screen controls and frankly, the settings dialog. And that's because I have this option to show my Zoom windows to other participants when I'm screen sharing. This will not show up. You will not even see this option until we enable it in the web settings. But if you're giving a demonstration to somebody in the future and you're trying to show them this, just note that you'll need to enable this setting in the web portal. Again, we'll discuss that shortly, and then tick this box to enable it. And that's how you can do that. Chat, you can specify some different chat options here. Background and filters, again, all the fun stuff is here. You can upload custom backgrounds and all kinds of good stuff there. Really good thing to point out here is if you're using local recording, this is where you specify where your local recordings will land. When I say land, that just means when you do local recording and then you end the session, what folder does it go to? So you can specify this here. We get a lot of questions of, hey, I'm trying to save to an encrypted hard drive, or I'm trying to save to a shared network drive. That is not supported, not recommended. Sometimes it might work, but just know that it's definitely not something that's supported. So it needs to be a local hard drive specific to your machine. Profile options, if you clicked on view advanced features, it'll pop up the the web portal, the web browser, and I'm struggling to find the last one that I want to show you, which is certainly the most important one, which is language. Rebecca, you're gonna have to help me out.
Yeah, language is online.
Got it. Okay, perfect.
Before you close out of, or go back to the main section where you had your Zoom application open, there is also a way to update your Zoom application that you have downloaded.
Oh, thank you. Yes, great point.
And note that Zoom doesn't automatically update for you unless it's a really big update. So if you want to have always the newest features, then you might want to check more frequently for those updates.
Great. Yeah, great point. Thank you for bringing this up. And it also depends on the computer that you have. So if you have a machine that's managed by DDS, if you're not familiar with DDS, you probably don't have a DDS managed machine, but in some cases, you won't even be able to update from here. So, and when I say that, oops, oh my goodness, I lost the screen again. Here we go. All right. So you click on your profile icon or your initials here, and you would just go down to check for updates. And I think I'm just one behind here, but this is where it would do it. It'll tell you here it's paused. But if you get a prompt when you attempt to update from here, that means that you might have a DDS managed machine and you would need to update either through the software center or through self-service or through the admin. So if you have a departmental OIT liaison, they may be able to update it for you. And I definitely do encourage you to update. Zoom is releasing so many updates currently. There's a lot of features that may not, say you're trying to use a feature and it's not available and you're confident you know where you're supposed to be enabling it. It's probably because you haven't updated. So just keep that up to date. Yeah, I think that covers everything here, and we can go ahead and move over to our web settings, which is kind of the fun part. We'll go
and I want to mention that as we are now shifting to the web settings, there's a difference between the settings that you change on your desktop application and the settings that you change on your web portal. So be cognizant of both, and you might want to take the time to invest in looking at what settings are in each place.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, and like I was saying earlier, they're two different things. I mean, they ultimately harmonize, but the settings that you change in your administrative portal and the Zoom web portal are the larger changes that are going to propagate down to all meetings, change the default behavior of a setting permanently, very much different than in-meeting controls. One that I really like to point out here is, it's kind of front and center, but it's waiting room. I mentioned the waiting room earlier. You see it's not on here by default. That doesn't mean that the option in your Zoom when you're scheduling is not there. So see, I still have the option to choose the waiting room at the scheduling level. However, it is not on by default. So if something's off, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's off and unusable. It just means that that's the default behavior of it. The other thing that I mentioned with the waiting room is the default behaviors of that. So I said that users that are not currently in your account, in our case, CU Boulder credentials, that do not have those credentials will go directly into the waiting room. What that also means is that those that do have an account will go directly into the meeting. You can change those options here. You can specify. So if you want every single person in every single waiting room to go directly into the waiting room, do that. That used to be the behavior, and Zoom recently changed this. This is really good for education partners who have 9 times out of 10, they have everybody that they want to come through directly because they're signed in with SSO and their credentials, but they have guest speakers that they want to go through, or they have other participants they may not recognize. So that eliminates the need for having to have, say you have a class of 200 people and you have 5 guest speakers. Well, all 200 people or students would come through, bypass the waiting room, and then you have those 5 guest participants that you can individually admit. So there's that. The other, I think, what I really like to do is on Windows is a Control F, and I do a search for the setting that I think is there, or the setting that I think I need to change. So let's see. I want to search for file share. Oops, file. And that's a keyword that I know. And I believe this is the one that we were referencing earlier. So we have the option to do the file transfer. It's off currently. I'm in a different, this is a different Zoom session that we're in right now, but you would want to enable this one here if you want to be able to, for host and participants to send files through the chat. Just know that that will be available for everybody. And this is really going to bother me, and I need to bring this up right now because I didn't discuss this earlier, and it's the security section. So I'm so sorry I'm jumping back into the web portal here, but I want to familiarize you with the security section if you're not. But say, it's totally off subject. I'm so sorry. Just pay attention to the security options here. But you can dynamically allow people to share their screen, to enable the chat. It's all kind of, it just brings these settings front and center here. And I really want to point that out. And the file share just transfer reminded me of that. So please take note of that. And sorry for the segue there. Yeah, so file share. I think this is where we're going to find the language. There is language interpretation. Do we need to discuss that here, Rebecca?
I don't think it's super relevant, but I would want to mention if you go to your profile settings, that's where you can actually change the language. So go up on your screen and then profile, and then you can change the language there from English to another language. So let's say you are an instructor of Spanish and you wanted to have your students understand what the Zoom terminology is in that language. You can actually change your language to that setting, and your students can do the same. If they are taking other classes in other languages, then they would want to default back to English when they're done. But that is an option for you if you wanted to know what Zoom's terminology is in the language that you're teaching.
Absolutely. And just for clarification, when we're changing the language here, Rebecca, it only changes the language of the things that are in the desktop application, the system prompted messages, things like that. It's not changing audio language. It's not changing the chat language that people are typing in, right?
Exactly. And it doesn't select it for your students either. This is just for your personal Zoom.
Perfect. So that is the language setting. Moving back over to kind of regular settings, like I said, do a Control F or Command F, I think on Mac, and just search for the keyword. There's a ton of different stuff. If there's something, like I said, that you're not seeing in like a setting that's not available in the desktop application, come over to your global settings in the web portal and take a look to see if it's there. It very, very well could be. We're going to move over to cloud recording management. And well, this is, I'm sorry, cloud recording settings, but this is where you can specify all the different options. So if you want to record, cloud recording layouts and local recording layouts are very different. This is where you would specify specifically for cloud recordings, the different types of layouts that you would like to use. So, you know, by default, the option is record the active speaker with the shared screen. I think we included some links in our documentation so you can see the different layouts, but if not, we'll forward that off to you. But there's options there. There's some advanced cloud recording options. If you, for example, one point of confusion, but is still really important to leave up is by default is the administrator for the CU Boulder Zoom account. We've specified that we want by default passcodes for shared cloud recordings. A lot of people will come back and say, hey, I sent out this, but I didn't schedule a passcode on it. So when you share out a Zoom cloud recording, there is also, it'll tell you what the passcode is, and you need to distribute that to the people that will be viewing that. You can turn this off by yourself, and I won't do it for you. I will point you to where to do it, but feel free to disable that setting if you'd like. There is kind of a backup security setting here, which is require users to authenticate before using the cloud recordings. And again, that's a default setting that administrators have set that up for you on your behalf so that only people in CU Boulder can view those recordings. There's all kinds of FERPA policies and things like that. So those are the default settings, but take a peek around here and you can see that. And then we will also move over now to cloud recording management and kind of what our new retention policy is. I'll show you quickly how to run a quick report, but on the left-hand navigation pane, you'll just go over to your recordings. In this case, this is a brand new test account that I've recently set up. But this is a list of where all of your cloud recordings will show. And let me see if I have, this is an incognito window. Let me see. Allow me to do it here. Yeah, so disregard this admin section. You won't see any of this, but I just wanted to give you a high-level overview of what it looks like for cloud recordings. And they're all here. So you would run a, if you want to run a report to see a list of all of your recordings over time, I highly encourage that. CU Boulder recently enabled, as of this last Sunday, actually, in order to manage the very much finite storage space in the Zoom cloud, we have tens of thousands, 50,000 plus users in the CU Boulder Zoom account. And lots of people are using cloud recordings. So it adds up very quickly. So after 120 days of initiating a recording or completing a recording, it's going to be automatically deleted. So it's very, very important to run a report periodically, double check to see when it's going to auto delete. If you have something that's going to auto delete in a couple of days, you should navigate to that recording specifically and download those files and then offload them to a different storage location. I'm not going to, we're kind of running low on time, so I'm not going to discuss the different options, but they are there. But yeah, this is where you would go ahead and do run a report. I want to show you the share option. Again, remember the default setting, mine's different here, but if you want to share a specific individual recording out publicly, you can choose that. Or if you only want the authenticated users to view, you can choose that. Do you want people to be able to download the cloud recording? Sure, go for it. You can do it here. Do you want them to see the transcript? Do you want a passcode? Remember, in our settings, our overall settings, we can disable this passcode protection by default so that it always defaults to nothing. However, say you have one that's particularly confidential or whatever the case is, you can password protect those recordings individually. So when we're making these settings here, remember, I'm just doing this for an individual recording, and I'm doing that from the Share tab. And with very little time yet, I think we covered everything kind of here. There is a local recording section here where you can see where the different, these are your local recordings. It'll give you a file path. So say mid-semester, you change the default storage location for your local recordings, and you don't remember where you changed it to, you can come to the management portal, take a look at the local recordings, and it'll give you the file path in which it was saved. That is that, and we're going to go ahead and move over.
Do you want to go over how to find reports within that portal?
Sure, good point. I should cover that really quickly. I think I need to show that on my non-admin account.
So as Dave is navigating here, I want to mention that there's two reports that I find particularly interesting. One is the ability to run a participants report. So let's say you have to take attendance to your class and you don't want to be remembering, oh my gosh, who was there that day? You can actually run a participant report from this session and you'll be able to see who was actually logged on. So you can do this, a week later, if you totally forgot to take attendance that day, you can run a report on your meeting to see who was logged on. And you can also run a report on polls. So for example, you ran a poll to see how students were doing on a particular topic. You can go back and see that poll report.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, so here you would navigate over to the reports section. You have two different types of reports that Rebecca was just pointing out. There's a usage report, and a usage report is associated with attendance, essentially. You just, they're interchangeable. And then the meeting report, which will allow you to run either a registration report. If you've ever required registration, you want to see who's registered for a meeting, you can do that here. Or if you want to get responses from a poll report, that would also be done in the meeting report section. But usage report would be here. Again, I'm not going to have anything because this is a brand new test account that I did set up. But you would essentially set the date range, you do search, and it'll show you a list of all the meetings that you had here for that date range. And under the participants tab, there's going to be a little number, and that number is going to be highlighted and hyperlinked. You can click that number of participants, and then it'll pull up a quick report, and it will show you the name of the person, how long they were signed into the meeting, what time they signed in, did they sign in with their CU Boulder credentials. So it's super helpful. And we're also going to discuss that here shortly over in the, or actually now, in the Zoom Canvas integration, which we will go over. Yeah, we're going to use this one. Oh shoot, it's because I'm in an incognito window. Okay, cool. So I'm just in my test sandbox here, and Zoom is going to be available in the nav bar by default for all of your courses. So you would just simply click on Zoom, and it's going to tie you into it's going to authenticate Canvas and Zoom. So it's tying you back ultimately to your Zoom account. So this is really, really cool. TAs and instructors only will have the option to schedule a meeting. Students cannot schedule a meeting. So this is probably all going to look super familiar to you. Canvas schedule. And you would go ahead and schedule everything that you would typically do. You know, a recurring meeting, set your passcode, do all of this, you know, all the stuff here. If you want to record the meeting automatically to the cloud, go for it. And that's that. You schedule it directly in here. Perfect. So we did that. Actually, I probably should set this just for this demonstration. I want to change this to a recurring meeting so you can see what that looks like from the student's side of things. So boom, I scheduled it directly in Canvas. It's all set here. Now, if I navigate back here and I go to the student view, this is what the students are going to see. They're going to also see the Zoom function. They click here, and they'll see the list of all the meetings for the course, right, over time. And they have the simple option to join directly from here. You'll see there's also a cloud recordings tab available to them. So what's really cool is that as the instructor, if you've set, for example, the option to automatically record to the cloud, all your recordings will show up here. Now, by default, they're going to be disabled. We did that on purpose to give you time to allow to modify or just determine, you know, maybe you don't want every single recording to be published directly to the students, but it's there. But you want to just pick and choose which one you do, that's fine. So you would just publish it, and then once you hit the publish tab, students will be able to see the recording in their cloud recording section. A big point here is that the way that Canvas works is there's no way for the Zoom integration to respect section numbers. So if you have a single Canvas course with multiple sections associated with it, if any meeting or any cloud recording that you publish in that course is going to be visible across all the different participants in those section numbers. So it's just something to take note of in that situation. You know, if you want the ease of use of the Zoom integration, which we've heard is really, really helpful, it may be worth creating a separate Canvas course for each section. Just something to take note of there. The other thing to note is in the previous meeting section, we just discussed the usage reports where you can find out who was in a meeting, if you want to grab attendance and stuff like that. You'll see here, once a meeting has ended and moved from, you know, for each instance, for example, so say this has ended and it's moved to previous meetings because it's over, you'll get the report option. And then by default, these were just test meetings, so there's no data here. You'll have usage report or a meeting report, attendance report right here. It'll be front and center. You can download it. And same thing with the poll report. It'll be there auto-populated. So you don't have to navigate there to the Zoom web portal. However, there's been some confusion. So when you schedule a Zoom meeting outside of the integration, say you use the Zoom web portal or the desktop application just via this normal route, it does not automatically show up into the core or to the Canvas integration. Why? Because how does Zoom know which course to put that Zoom meeting in, right? So what you can do though is, say you did a bunch of work on the back end, you forgot that there's a Zoom Canvas integration. You can navigate to the top right corner here and go to import meeting, and you can pop the meeting ID of the meeting that you've already been hosting outside of Canvas, pop it in here, it'll import it in just like you scheduled it through. All cloud recordings will come through automatically and be associated with it. You can publish them. And yeah, that's that. But really a handy function. We've had a lot of people not realize that they need to do that. If you want to get a quick high-level overview of all of your Zoom meetings associated with your Zoom account, you can click that option for all my Zoom meetings and recordings. Just know that this is not importing everything. It's giving you a high-level overview. In this situation, I like to say, click this, and say that I wanted to import this meeting ID. It just gives you a quick place to copy this. So you go Control-C, and you just go back to the standard view here, and then you can just quick import, copy paste, and be good there. So yeah, that's the Zoom Canvas integration, and we're just about out of time. So I want to give us 2 or 3 minutes to answer any questions that you might have.
And I just want to mention that I think the Zoom integration for Canvas is so neat. Our students are oftentimes overwhelmed with the amount of things that they have to access. So by integrating directly into Canvas, it's one less thing they have to control, and they can go directly to one place where everything lives for their class. So I'm really happy that OIT has made this initiative happen. It's so great. So thank
Absolutely.
you.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, for the instructor, on the instructor side too, we definitely heard the feedback that was coming. I mean, cloud recording for Zoom was just enabled in March in light of the pandemic. So that really opened up the opportunity for people to record and use all the fancy features of Zoom cloud recording and just copy and paste a Zoom cloud recording link directly into the Canvas course. The problem with that is you have to, for example, you have to update every single recording that you have, which if you have a class 3 days a week, you're updating three times a week. It's all just automated. It's just there. So on the instructor side as well, it's supposed to be really helpful. So we're glad it's up and running. And I definitely encourage you to use it if it applies.
Thanks so much, Dave. I really appreciate your time to come and host this. We are all so thankful to get some expertise on Zoom and learn how to effectively manage this really intricate tool that has a lot of great features. We just need to know how to harness all of those in our classrooms. And for those who would like to learn more about Zoom, I'll be hosting another workshop next week, same time, Thursday at 1 p.m. on the 11th. And that will be talking specifically about leveraging those applications for languages. So we'll be talking about some of the more advanced features, taking a deep dive into breakout rooms, some of the activities that you might consider, and we'd love to have you there. So join us at that workshop. And if there's any questions, please do let us know.